I will pass it over to you. I did tell our attendees here that you are more than welcome to go past 10 if you have some more information that you want to share, since we're getting a little bit slower of a start this morning. But yeah, thank you so much for being here with us.
No worries. Thank you so much. And we're just gonna go ahead and start sharing our screen. So if you could make both Jennifer and I co-hosts, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, you should already have the availability to share your screen, but I will make you a co-host.
Oh, we do. Okay, never mind. Awesome. I'm so used to our BetterLesson what's it called? Permissions, right? So awesome. So I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer. Jennifer's going to kick it off, and then I'll do kind of the middle portion of the session, and then Jennifer's going to wrap us up at the end.
All right. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, everybody. So wonderful to see you all today. Today, we're going to be talking about wellness and your emotional needs, caring for your heart and your mind. A lot of times when this comes up, we're talking about our students. Maybe we don't always talk about ourselves as educators too, and what we can do to take care of ourselves during the school year. So here we go. What I'd love to do is we have, and maybe Matt can share it in the chat for us. If you have your agenda up, we'll have that up today, and we'll share it periodically in the next few minutes. But before we jump into that, we'd love to hear from you. So what are your thoughts behind the importance of emotional support in the workplace? And range it on a scale from 1 to 4, 1 being not very important, 4 being extremely important, and give us a brief explanation of your response. And if you could type that in chat, that would be wonderful. And this will kind of get our discussion going today around teacher wellness. I'm already seeing a few 4s. Seeing healthy minds and bodies from Odie. Thank you. Would anyone else like to share? And maybe for some of you that put a 4, what are your thoughts behind why? Why is this important? Very true, Melissa. There can be challenging days, and having the support can make a difference in those challenging days. Ability to cope with stress. Very true, Lori. Okay. So it seems like everyone's on the same page that is shared in chat, that this is important. This is important to talk about, and that we need it as we go through the school year and as we lead up to the school year. Okay, so a little bit about Matt and I. My name is Jennifer Bloomingdale. I'm an instructional coach with BetterLesson. I live near Albany, New York with my husband and our 3 boys. I'm a former classroom teacher, turned instructional coach and instructional designer, and I'll pass it to Matt quick to share his.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. I'm Matt. I'm coming to you from the Boston area. I've been a classroom teacher here, teaching ESL, so English as a second language, mostly to students from the Dominican Republic and Central America for the past about a decade. And I've recently gone back to grad school to become a school counselor focused on mental health in schools. And so teacher wellness and the whole kind of holistic wellness is really important to me and to my work. And so I'm excited to be here sharing this with you today. So I'll pass it back to Jennifer.
Thank you, Matt. And I see Odie also said, as we move forward with restructuring and reimagining educational delivery because of COVID-19, we need to be at our very best. And I can't agree more with everything all of you have shared, that and we're still navigating, right, as we go into this next school year. In order for us to rise to these challenges, our health and well-being needs to be priority as well, so we can manage all of those challenges that are coming. So as we go through our session, we're going to have kind of these three big ideas that we're going to touch on, and Matt will touch on these as we go through. But the first is that happy teachers and hurt teachers, which I know Matt will chat about, are more effective. Being attuned to emotions help manage change, like we just talked about, which has come through in some of your responses there. And modeling wellness makes it a priority. So as your students see you modeling your wellness, as maybe coworkers, as your leaders around you see you modeling this, it becomes a priority within everything you're doing. Those tiniest change can have that big ripple effect. So being emotionally in tune and having those empathetic partnerships and giving space for reflection and processing are key parts of supporting wellness. And as we go through, we're hoping that you'll walk away with some specific ways that you can do this for yourself in the year ahead. So before we jump in again, what are your commitments for today? So if you look on the left-hand side, we have a list of commitments there for our about hour that we're spending together. So take a look at that and say, okay, so today I'm going to be maybe present and engaged so that tomorrow I can sustain my plan of action. So our hope is that you'll leave today with a plan of action. So take a look at this and you pick, what is your focus for today? How will you show up for today, commit to today, so you can take steps towards your wellness for this school year? And I hope everyone can maybe share that in chat with us. And I'll stop talking for a second so you can read and think about that for a minute. And if you'd like to grab the mic to share quickly, that's fine as well. Melissa shared today she'll reflect on her current practices. Melissa, wondering if you might share your tomorrow statement then. So we'll do that today. So tomorrow you can, what do you think? And feel free to grab the mic.
I'm thinking maybe tomorrow I can try something new.
Sounds perfect. And our hope is that by the end of this, you'll have a few things to pick from that you can try new. Thank you for sharing. All right, would anyone else like to either grab the mic or type in chat quick what your commitment is for our time together today and how it will affect you tomorrow? Thank you, Lori and Odie. Would either of you like to grab the mic to share your tomorrow statement then too?
Well, I think it's important to provide resources to individuals who are serving our most precious commodities, our children, and any type of strategies and techniques that we can provide, especially with the impact of being trauma involved because of the global pandemics. A lot of our underserved children have been already trauma impacted, and this has only been more severe. So how can we help support those who are providing them love and care and education, a balance in which to be able to do it more effectively?
Thank you. Right. Appreciate you sharing, Odie. All right, we'll go to the next one. Whoops, there we go. So as we move forward, I see we have a lot of common beliefs as we move forward with this topic. And we've kind of hinted at where we're going, but what we'll do today is our hope is that you'll leave with an awareness and understanding, which sounds like a lot of you have that awareness already, an understanding of ways in which mindfulness helps to support your wellness and impact others, kind of like Odie just shared as well. So we'll move into the define phase where we'll dig into those three big ideas, which Matt will lead, and Matt will also lead exploring. We'll take a look at the tools that you can use to put a lot of this in practice. And then I'll jump in and we'll talk about your specific plan, your personal choice, where you want to focus your tiny change or your shift or what you want to explore. And then we'll talk about next steps. Are there any questions before I pass over to Matt? Okay. And really quick too, sorry, I forgot, Matt, before we pass over, you'll have maybe two things up on your screen. You'll have our Zoom window for viewing and chatting, which it seems a majority of you have found. If your chat window gets lost, just let us know. We'll help you find it. Sometimes it disappears as we share screens and move things around. And then also Matt shared in the chat the important links to get to your agenda. When you click on that, it'll prompt you to make a copy so you can capture your own notes. And when we go into that build section, you'll build right within that agenda. So all of your resources will be right in one spot. Is there anyone having a hard time getting to the agenda or making their copy or anything I can help with before we move into that define stage? Okay. And lastly, we have our community agreements. A few of you shared your personal agreements. Be present and engaged. Share your realities. What's your reality right now? Some of you have shared already with us in chat and by grabbing the mic. Seek to understand what this is going to look like for you and lower the stakes. Everyone's in a similar position this year. None of this has to be perfect today. No one's expecting you to build these master plans. We're here to give you options to explore as you move forward. Okay, and I think now I'm officially handing over to Matt.
There we go. Awesome. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for that intro. I just wanted to make a quick note about timing, just with our late start here today. So our goal today is going to be to get us through the define and explore phases before 10 o'clock to make sure that all of the content, the content pieces of our call today we'll get through. And then that build time, sorry, Jennifer, in advance, that build time might get bumped until after 10 o'clock. So if you're able to stay on the call, able to hang around or do some of the build work after that 10 o'clock, that might be when that happens. So I just wanted to note that before we dive in. I also wanted to just note about the 3 helpful links. Sometimes the check-in link is used as an attendance check. I do like to just make that clear at the beginning of the calls, just for clarity's sake. I don't know if that's the case today with SSDA, but sometimes that is the case. So just make sure you click that button. If you click that button and it brings you to a page that has the name of our session, you're checked in. That's all. And then the agenda, feel free to make a copy. We do just have about half an hour left in our call. So if you're feeling overwhelmed by moving back and forth from the Zoom screen to the agenda, no worries at all. We can actually just send all of the useful links into the chat. And the slide links is there just in case you have any vision issues or you want to revisit any of the slides that we're seeing today. So no need to open that now, but just know that you have that in the chat in case you'd like to access that. You can also access all of these links through the BetterLesson lab, which is our website, betterlesson.com. All right, all of that said, that's just a quick recap of that before we dive into defining what do we mean by teacher wellness, right? What do we mean by teacher wellness and teacher emotions? So I'm going to have us just take about a minute to read through this. If you'd like, feel free to annotate on our screen. To do that, you should see a green band at the top of my screen, of the shared screen, that says Matt Clements is sharing his screen. Next to that, it should say options. Unless you're on a Chromebook, and this won't work if it's on a Chromebook. And if you click on that options button, you should see a button that says annotate. And that'll allow you to draw on my screen like I'm doing right now. You can feel free to add any annotations. You can use the stamps, for example, add some stars and hearts to anything that really speaks to you, add some question marks or to things that you're curious about learning more about, or even underline some things with the drawing function. So feel free to make this page your own, or if you'd rather not do that, feel free just to read this. That's also okay too. So we'll give you a minute just to read through this and to get a sense of what we mean by teacher wellness before we dive into how we can affect teacher wellness and teacher stress at school. And Jennifer's chat made me think of the fact that if you can't access the annotation, but you do want to share something, feel free to just drop it in the chat as well. I agree, Carrie, it's a good one. I'd love to hear, just as we wrap up this minute, I'd love to hear any words that are sticking out or any pieces of this that are really resonating with you. So let's take another 30 seconds now in the chat. Whoops, there we go. 30 seconds now in the chat, or by unmuting. Just what are some of the words or some of the pieces of this definition that are sticking out to you all? Absolutely. It's an individual pursuit, meaning it's going to be different for every person. What's going to make us feel well and cared for is going to be different for each and every one of us as educators. Absolutely. And as students, right? Side note, this goes for students too.
It's Carrie here. I loved the last sentence, the active process. Whoever just circled that, it's definitely an active process. Yeah, love that.
Absolutely. And Carrie and whoever just circled that, I think the key piece there is that this just doesn't happen passively, right? So you're not just going to feel well, like all of the stress of the school day melts away just automatically, right? It is something we have to work at. It's something we need to ensure is in our lives as educators or as school-based staff, right? As anyone in the school building really needs to take this time and this effort to actively dig into wellness, right? And to dig into what's going to make each one of us feel individually well. Okay, any other thoughts before we move forward? Awesome. I'll just add one more here. The other one that I wanted to add is this one. It's in the second area down here, and it's this focus on holistic health, right? So really thinking about how we can focus not just on our physical health, but really on the many dimensions of health that allow us to work well and that allow us to come to school as our full selves, right? And you can see sort of lots of those ideas over here on the left-hand side, right? So our mental health, our spiritual well-being, our emotional well-being, our social well-being, and our environmental well-being, right? We do need to feel, so we can kind of think of this as our basic needs, right? Our basic needs need to be met. Our physical and mental well-being needs to be there, and our spiritual, emotional, and social lives need to be kind of in harmony and working for us as educators. Those are important things for us to make clear for all of us working in schools. Any other thoughts? Go ahead and put them in the chat. I'm really cognizant of the time today, so I want to make sure that we're moving at a good clip. But we're going to think about the sort of first big idea here. And to do that, we're going to read a little bit about, we're going to read some of these quotes from students, actually, not even from teachers. So go ahead and take a look. And you can feel free to annotate on this page as well. Oops. Sorry, there we go. Now you can annotate if you'd like. Also feel free to just chat any quotes, any portions of the quotes that really stick out to you as really resonant or really salient. We'll just do this for another minute. Just about 15 more seconds. If anybody wants to jump in and share their thoughts about these quotes, feel free to. Awesome. Odie pointing out the last quote there. I love this annotation thing. It's really fun. Awesome. And I really love that third quote as well. So I actually circled one of the words in it in pink. But just that idea that, whatever emotions that a teacher is feeling really does kind of like transmit through osmosis to the rest of the class, right? And it really pervades the rest of the class with a certain emotional quality. Not all the time, right? Sometimes we can sort of put on a good face and put on a good show for the kids. But if we're not well, we're not going to be able to just sort of automatically transmit those feelings of positivity and well-being to the class. One thing that I should say before we move any further, one thing that this session is not saying is many of you may have heard the idea of toxic positivity, which is saying you must be happy to do your job at all times, and if you're not, that's a problem. That's not what we're saying here at all, right? We're saying we want you to be able to come as your full self and care for yourself to be as positive, as happy, and as heard as you can be in your schools in order to create the sort of climate that we want students to learn in and that we want to work in as educators. So this doesn't say you can't ever have a bad day. This is saying how do we navigate that and support a climate of the climate of the school to allow us to be our full selves and the emotional selves that we want to be, that most suits us. That's what we're trying to say. I hope I clarified that a little bit. And if anybody wants to add anything here, I would love to hear what quote resonated with you here.
I'll just jump in, Matt. What came to me as you were talking is it's almost, how can we take care of ourselves on those bad days is really what came to me. And this was shared a little bit in the beginning too, when they were saying, well, we need these skills to help navigate the stress and the bad days that do happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anyone else want to jump in? I told you I'm training to be a school counselor, so I'm very comfortable with silence and with waiting for people if they want to jump in. I did just want to call out Odie's quote as well, the one that hit the arrows pointing to at the bottom. Just this idea of, like just that direct correlation between teacher mood and teacher emotions and student emotions, right? And so this idea that again, I'm kind of taking it as I'm thinking through this again, and this is kind of like on the spot, but as I'm thinking through that word happy at the top, doesn't have to be happy, right? But positive, right? Positive teachers or emotionally well teachers, be it happy or emotional on whatever day it is, right? That emotional quality will kind of transmit to our classes and our students. Yeah, absolutely. And Melissa's saying something very similar, right? It's easy to forget that when you're in front of the class, right? Or when you're, I think sometimes we think we have to be those stoic teachers that I'm just here to teach, emotions play no part of my class, and I'm here to do the academics, nothing else. And we forget that emotional transference, that emotional transference is kind of just happening along the way, right? It's not something that we even have to pay attention to. It's going to happen, and if we don't attend to it, it's going to happen anyway, right? Awesome. So thank you so much for these thoughts. That's sort of our first big idea. Happy and heard teachers are more effective. You can see right there at the top. And these quotes from students are one piece of that. There's also significant research that tells us the significant academic research that tells us the same thing. Okay. The next big idea here is this idea that being attuned to emotion helps manage the change. So we've actually sort of talked about this a little bit. This idea of, regardless of how your day is going, regardless of where you're at, being attuned to where your emotions are can help you change the quality of your class and can actually help us instruct better, right? So if we know what we're coming in with and where we want to be and how we want to present, we can actually, there are tools that we can use and things that we can do to change the emotional quality of our classroom in order to support ourselves to be better teachers and better educators, and in order to better counselors, and in order to support our students to learn more, right? So 4 big areas to kind of focus on are self-awareness and self-management. These are the 2 sort of self-focused areas of emotional regulation. And then we also have social awareness and relationship management, which are the 2 competencies that are more focused on the social dynamics of the classroom, of the school, of the workplace, right? And so thinking about how can we be self-aware in order to self-regulate our own emotions, right? And that's going to be individual, as we talked about at the beginning. It's an individual process. And also, how can we be aware of our social environment, both the social dynamics of the school, of the district, the school, the classroom, the one-on-one individual interactions we have with students, in order to manage those relationships and manage those social dynamics. How can we start to gain a broader awareness of that, right? So I love this. I'm going to go ahead and clear these drawings that I made just so you can have this. This is something that I took a quick picture of when I first saw it. I was like, yes, these are the 4 areas that we need to focus on. If you're familiar with the CASTLE framework for social emotional learning for students, you'll notice these are 4 of the 5 competencies from there. And I think that's a really important thing to call out, that just the parity between our emotional needs and our need for emotional regulation and management and our students, right? They really go hand in hand. They really are the same thing at 2 different levels. All right. So one way to start to do this, especially in the self kind of area, right? The self-awareness and the self-management, is to use something called a mood meter. So maybe you've seen this before. It's a very simple tool. This is actually from I believe, if I'm getting this right, I believe this is from Ruler. I know that Ruler uses something similar to this, which is a social emotional program out of Yale. And basically, this mood meter, this mood chart, tracks emotional quality on 2 different spectra, right? So the y-axis here is energy. So how much energy you have. The higher up you go is the more energy you have. The lower down you go, the lower energy. And in the middle, so like these here, oops, lost my little drawing tool. These here would be kind of like neutral energy, right? Whereas like being enraged, you had a lot of energy when you're enraged. With despair or despondent, you kind of lacking energy. And then pleasantness on the x-axis, right? So these down here are less pleasant than the ones way up here at the top. And in the middle, these are kind of more neutral feelings, okay? So having a mood meter to sort of help us understand our own emotions and get a little bit more specific about where we're feeling, and kind of tracking where we're feeling, can be super, super helpful. This is I actually used an app that used this exact mood meter to help me track my feelings during a particularly trying year of school earlier in my career. And it really just helped me to kind of emotionally manage where I was and think about, how can I shift? Where am I trying to go from today? If I'm feeling lonely today, how can I try to shift a little bit more in this direction, or a little bit more in this direction, right? Have a little bit more energy, or have a little bit more of a pleasant emotional quality in my class. And just thinking of that and trying to help myself with that was a way to kind of, and tracking that was really helpful during that particularly challenging year. Okay, so I'm going to have you, so you've been looking at this for a little bit. I'm going to give you about 15 more seconds. If you'd like to share your emotional quality that you're feeling right now, feel free to share in the chat. We will not comment on them because that is your own, we're going to own our own emotions today, or just take the next 15 seconds to think about it. You don't have to share it if you don't feel comfortable, of course. So 15 more seconds just to look through this. Another way to think about this is, are you in the red? Are you in the yellow? Are you in the green? Are you in the blue? That's a helpful way. Which quadrant are you in is a helpful way to kind of think about your mood as well. Thank you, Jennifer. I forgot that was on the agenda. Jennifer added a direct link to this mood meter if you want to see it bigger kind of on your own screen. So just for the sake of time, I am going to move us forward. Again, we don't want to, we will have some time for a little bit of discussion in a moment, and then some time for debriefing after. The third big idea is that modeling wellness makes it a priority for the school. So this means that school leaders should be modeling this for teachers. This means that teachers should be modeling this for students. This means that peers, both teacher peers, school leader peers, student peers, should be modeling this for each other, right? And that doing this, the more that we do this, the more others start to copy this, right? And the more others start to do this as well. And it really makes that a priority in our schools. On your screen, you're seeing some, unfortunately, pretty dismal statistics about just how stressful it can be working in education when we are not attending to teacher wellness, right? And this really shows us just how important it is for all of us to make this a priority, for school leaders to make this a priority in our schools, and for us to make this, for wellness, a priority for our students. I'm going to leave it there. You can read some of those statistics. I don't want to share them out too much. You've got them there. You've got them in your slides, and we can revisit them later. I do want to share out a comment from Melissa in the chat. Just the idea about like feeling inspired about the mood meter and maybe using a version of that with students. There's actually an app that you can use. I think it's called Mood Meter. This is not a plug for that app. There's plenty of ways to track your mood. But there's actually an app that I think that has that exact mood meter. And it's like you can have a mood journal where you track your mood every day. And you can ask students to start seeing trends for that. But I will say, I think start with yourself too. I was very surprised at how revelatory it was just to track my mood over the course of I think I did it for just the first month of school. And I really felt like it helped me to just stay attuned to where I was during each and every day of class. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that you all have a little bit of time to just debrief with each other as colleagues and as fellow educators. So I'm going to go ahead and make 4 breakout rooms, and we're just going to debrief for 3 minutes each with another colleague on the call. Another colleague or 2. So some of our rooms will have 2 and some of our rooms will have just 1. Just take the next 3 minutes to think about those 3 big ideas that, you know, happy and heard, or emotionally attuned and heard teachers are more effective, that modeling wellness makes it a priority. And I'm forgetting how we termed our last one. Yes, being attuned to our emotions helps manage that change. Thinking of those 3 big ideas, what's resonated with you so far before we go and look at some strategies for doing this work in our schools and for making this a priority in our schools. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and open those up. Kind of automatic. It'll just move you in there and move you right back out after 3 minutes. So sorry if your conversations get cut off at that time. All right, here we go. I'm gonna stop my screen share. Hi, okay. Okay, awesome. I'm gonna pause, okay.
All righty.
Great. All right, here we go. So welcome back, everybody. We are going to move on now just to think a little bit more about the two main tools to kind of help us move towards these big ideas. Okay, the first tool is actually mindfulness, which hopefully many of you have heard about already. But really, using mindfulness, which can mean meditation. I should say that, should be really clear here. By mindfulness, we don't mean using a meditation app every morning for 10 minutes. That's not necessarily the mindfulness that we're looking for. But mindfulness meaning staying in the moment, staying grounded in the present, not letting ourselves let our emotions carry us away, but really staying present in order to be able to do that emotional regulation that we need to do. Okay, so to start off with, we're going to do two things related to mindfulness today. And again, it's going to be a little shorter than we had initially intended, but you can always go back to these resources later. We'd love to have you just for yourselves, just take a minute to write down the answer to these two questions. What do I most value? And how do I want others to perceive me today? These two questions are two questions that we suggest, or that with this mindfulness exercise and this mindfulness practice, you can start your day with every day. This is another way to kind of track things over time, right? So starting with a mindfulness practice that just brings you back into the moment, brings you back into what you want to get out of today can be super helpful. So just take a moment, jot it down, or just kind of reflect on it. We'll take a minute to do that. And then we're going to look at some other resources, or talk about the second part of this, and then look at some other resources. Just 5 more seconds. All right. And then you'll notice at the bottom, there are 2 more bullet points that say, did I live today in accordance with my most important values? And what did I learn from my interactions with others today? Those are sort of the corollary statements, or not statements, questions, for the end of the day, right? So if you kind of bookend your day with this mindfulness exercise, and this is one of many different mindfulness exercises that you could try out. But we suggest this one for educators because we have so many, what's the word? Interpersonal connections every day, right? And so since we're having this constant barrage of interpersonal interaction, this can be a good one to ground ourselves in our values, ground ourselves in the way that we want to present ourselves during the day, and then check in at the end of the day and say, did I do a good job with that? Or how can I kind of switch that up later on? Before we move any further, I want to give us just 3 minutes to take a look at some of the mindfulness resources on our agenda. So if you go to our agenda, and I'll go, actually, I'm going to ask Jennifer to add that link back into the chat. And then if you can either scroll all the way down or click on link number 4 that says additional resources. And there are 6 mindfulness resources listed right here in the additional resources section. I want to make sure that I give you just a little bit of time to dig into just one. 3 minutes is not a lot of time, but I would really urge you to take a look at some of these resources after the call today as well. One that I'm going to particularly highlight, and I am sort of plugging ourselves here, so we do have the mindfulness techniques that you can even use with students to allow yourself to do this in conjunction with your students and to give them a moment of mindfulness at the beginning of the day. And so that's link number 3, mindfulness techniques. I realize I wrote for BetterLesson, it should say from BetterLesson for educators. So you can take a look at that one right there if you're interested in looking at some more resources directly from us as well. Okay, so take about 2.5 more minutes, and then we'll come back together for one more tool, and then we'll give you an idea for how you can kind of build this into your own practice as well. Feel free to turn off your camera if that feels more comfortable. And if you're having any trouble accessing those resources, please let me know. just one more minute to check out one of those mindfulness resources, get a sense of what it is, skim it, and then you can come back to it later. If you liked a particular resource, I do encourage you to just go ahead and chat it, say which link it was or the title of it. You can just copy and paste the title of it or the link into the chat, just so your colleagues in the call can get a sense of what resources are out there, which ones felt the most useful. All right, so that was our 3 minutes. I'm going to move us on to just 2 more slides that we're going to get to before 10 o'clock Pacific time. I'm over in Boston, so it's going to be 1 o'clock for me. Just to make sure that you all know the second tool that we suggest for creating a culture of wellness for teachers at school. Okay, so this second tool is really the idea of deep listening, and we have that word down here at the bottom. And all of the ways that you might use deep listening are up here at the top, right? We listen to our students when they're upset when someone else is disrupting them, right? We listen to fellow teachers when they're having a bad day or they're struggling with something. We listen to frustrations from parents, and we hope to be listened to when we feel overwhelmed. We hope to be listened to by our colleagues, by our school administrators, by our district, et cetera, right? By instructional coaches like myself and like Jennifer, right? We hope to be listened to as well. So by creating a culture of deep listening, we can start to build a culture of empathy, an empathetic culture in schools that can allow us as educators and our students, our colleagues, et cetera, to feel heard and to then be better able to kind of emotionally tune to situations at school. Okay, so this is our second big idea. In order to give you a sense of what we mean by deep listening, we're actually going to look at what deep listening is not first with this article here. This is a quick summary of the article that you're seeing on your screen now. And the link to the actual article is in the chat. I'm going to show you what that looks like just very briefly. So when you click in the chat or on, if you're following the recording, if you click on link number 1, villains of listening, this leads you to the article. It's a very short article just about things that can get in our way when we're trying to really listen to others. Okay, so there's a description of those 4 villains that was also just on our shared screen a moment ago. And if you'd like to figure out which one you might struggle with the most, we suggest registering to this website right here on the right-hand side. And you can actually take a quick quiz that gives you a sense of your own learning style and gives you a sense of which of these villains might most get in your way when you're trying to listen to colleagues or to students or to parents, etc. Okay, so we suggest taking a look at this, but we do want to be really respectful of your time as well for those of you who are on the call with us. So it's 10:01 right now. If you do need to hop off, we suggest taking a read of this article first, and then checking in, and doing this quiz here by registering for it. What'll happen is they'll send you an email with the quiz, and you can take it from that email. Okay, I should have mentioned that. So if you do need to log off at this time, or if you're going to another session, feel free to do that. I am going to turn it over to Jennifer briefly, just to explain what our build is and what we suggest to do to integrate some of those 3 big ideas, as well as mindfulness and the 2 big tools, right? Mindfulness and deep listening into your practice as educators. So we'll be explaining that. If you need to log off, it will be in the recording and you can look at it later, or you can stick here with us if you have the time, and Jennifer will lead us through an activity for how we can build some of these things into our daily lives and into our practice as educators. And Jennifer, if it's all right, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you again, just for time's sake. And I'm going to go ahead. Here we go.
There we go. Perfect. All right. Thank you, Matt. Appreciate you staying. So we'll quickly take a look at how we can take steps to implement some of the ideas and concepts that we've talked about today. So how can we make it actionable and sustainable? Because sometimes when we try to make these massive, massive changes all at once, it's not always as successful because it's almost, we're biting off more than we can chew. So let's say you have an idea after exploring the resources or talking with each other a few minutes ago that you want to try or implement. So one example we hear is, I want to incorporate mindfulness and meditation spaces into my life. Then your next question would be, okay, how can I make this actionable? What small steps can I take? So these are 3 that we came up with. So first is putting it on your calendar. And maybe that's just the one thing you do, is to put 5 minutes of some type of mindfulness on your calendar. Create a checklist of something that you're going to do over the next few months or weeks, or even just that 1 week. What is the one thing you want to try for a week? Maybe find an accountability partner. Maybe there's a partner in your building or someone here that you know that you can connect with and say, okay, we're going to try this mindfulness activity maybe 3 out of the 5 days. Can you check in with me on Friday and see how I did and how it felt? So picking these really small steps that you can take to move you towards the concept or idea that you're excited about after coming to our session. So what can you do today? First is knowing your why. Why do you want to prioritize wellness in your own reality? And we talked about that quite a bit in the beginning of our session. It's because we know we're going to have stressors coming up. We know if we have a plan in place to manage them, we can better manage them and show up more completely for our students. So for today, which big idea do you want to prioritize? So we've talked about happy and heard teachers are more effective, being attuned to emotions help us manage, modeling wellness makes it a priority and helps support the school-wide culture of wellness. So maybe in the chat quick, even if you just want to type a 1, 2, or 3, what is your big idea that you want to prioritize today? Even if you love all 3, number 2 and 3 can wait for a few weeks from now. What is the one thing that you want to prioritize today? Okay, Carrie says number 2. Thank you, Carrie. Odie says 3. Okay, Melissa says 3. Great. So our next step is going to be, okay, what are some ideas or ways that I can, or you can support wellness in that specific area that you want to focus on? It might look different for all 3 of you. And what are some ways you can make it consistent for yourself? And resilient. Maybe it's a really hard day and you really don't feel like taking that 10-minute walk, but you know how you'll feel better after it, if that's one of your things. How can deep listening and empathy support you as an educator on this journey? What supports do you need outside of you that can help you make this change? Matt, do we want to go into giving some time to do that? How's everybody feeling that's here? Do you have time to maybe talk with each other to do it right now? Or is this something you want to take after you get off and give it a try? How's everyone feeling on time? Matt, you're cutting in and out.
Apologies, my audio
There we
does.
go.
Thank you for letting me know.
Yeah.
So I was just sharing that one thing that I did while Jennifer was speaking was just write up 3 suggestions for after our call. I'm going to say them verbally just for the recording as well. Just number 1, revisit the mindfulness resources on our agenda. Number 2, read the article on the 4 villains of listening, register for the quiz if you'd like and take that. And lastly is to brainstorm some ideas. So Jennifer, what I think might be helpful is to kind of show them where the questions are on the agenda and then give people time if they'd like on the call, and we can stick around for a little bit if you'd like to while you're doing that planning, or you can feel free to log off and go go about the rest of your day if you do need to do that as well. I think that'll give people multiple options. Does that sound okay?
That sounds good. And would you mind, actually, for people that are jumping off, would you mind putting the survey link into the chat so they have that before they go?
Absolutely, absolutely. And sometimes that is used as an attendance check as well. I'd like to be clear about that.
Thank you. All right, so what Matt is referencing, I just need to move our window a little bit, is down here at the bottom of your agenda, you'll see we have those big ideas right now for you. And then we have those specific questions that can kind of guide you through thinking what your next step might be. So that's why we had you make a copy so that you would have everything all in place. You have all of your resources, some of the mini activities we did today, and then all the additional resources here. If you didn't get to explore them all, they're all in one place. So this will kind of walk you through what your first step might be. And I think what we'll do is, if you'd like to stay on and work through this with us here, Matt and I will stay on. If you need to go, because we realize we're a little over time, please take that survey before you head out, and feel free to reach out if you have any questions. If you are working through this afterwards too, Matt and I are happy to help. You can contact us through the lab. That link should have our information there for you. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions as you implement.
Thank you so much, Melissa. I see that you have to go. No problem. I will just share my screen briefly just to show you what it will look like when you get to the survey. So if you wouldn't mind just navigating to the survey before you log off, that would be wonderful. And that's for everybody, not just Melissa. But when you click on it, if you scroll down, you should see something like this that says complete survey right here in the lower right-hand corner. And we'd love to have you just complete our survey today to give us some feedback. And so we can make improvements for the future as well. Awesome. And again, so feel free to share out, to unmute if you'd like. We'll stay on as long as people are interested and can. Yeah, so feel free to use this time. This is your time to get any support you would like, or to collaborate if you'd like. Yeah, and just to jump on what Jennifer said, thank you guys. Thank you all so much for being here. We appreciate it. And we're wishing you all the best of luck this school year and incorporating teacher wellness and holistic wellness into your school year. And if Jennifer, if you wanted to say anything by unmuting, feel free. I want to take the last word.
Nope, I think you said it perfectly. Thank you, Matt. And thank you everybody for joining us.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Jennifer.
Absolutely. Bye, John.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Bye, Odie.
Bye, Odie.
I thank you for a great session, very clear, very strategic, and very usable in a lot of different domains. So thank you for sharing your expertise and resources today. I know you're in different time zones, so I won't say this morning.
Yeah, that's right. I'm in the